Welcome to Civil Dissent. These podcasts are about you. Ron and I are speaking as citizen activists, reacting to the explosive events of the time affecting us all. In the spirit of the fairness doctrine, we will air conflicting views, and you will determine what is valid. We will provide you with leads and contacts for government, business, community organizations, and more for you to take action. In democracy, information and participation are the key. Use your key, your voice, for a better world. Between Dr. Ian and myself, we have traveled to more than a dozen countries, studied political science, anthropology, communications, and more. We differ on our views, but agree friendship is more important than differences, and we invite you to feel the same way. Let's begin by checking in on what has recently caught our attention.
Well, welcome again to Civil Dissent. I'm Ron Haben. I'm here with my friend Ticia Bauza, and this program is about two people who agree on absolutely nothing. We agree on absolutely nothing. I've got my notes right here. And what we are going to do is try to express our views on topics of the day from any field of endeavor, frankly, and come out of it with a better understanding of not only each other's positions, but how we got there, and see if a friendship can be not only survivable, but strengthened at the end of our very real tussle. This ain't the WWE, this is for real. And sorry, Mr. McMahon, if that's offensive. Hope not. But I'd like to begin by presenting Ticia, and maybe you could tell our friends what might have been a highlight for you this last week.
Well, my attention was caught by the fact that apparently England has sent over to Israel as a way of teaching children English, something that incorporates AI. And it was fascinating because the way it was illustrated, there were children in a classroom, and then the teacher says to them, "Okay, we're going underwater." She presses a button, and every wall in the room looks as if though they're immersed underwater. She then begins to talk to them about the different life forms underwater and its importance. I mean, it was like taking them in a trip into another world underwater. It was a wonderful piece of technology. The other thing, quite frankly, that I was interested in was there's been a lot of discussion about water use, water pollution, etc. And apparently Florida is having some issues, along with some other places. And one of the issues has to do with the amount of water, separate and apart from other things as well, in toilets. And it occurred to me, in India, they're beginning to use and distribute what are known as dry toilets. And what's interesting about that is I don't see why we can't get developers to start building those into new construction. And I don't want to hear about, the cost, because India, quite frankly, is piss poor. And if they can be providing dry toilets and dealing with their water pollution, we should be able to do the same. In any event, is there anything in particular that's caught your attention?
Well, yes, your last remark about India being piss poor, I thought was very, very germane to the topic of toilets. That's very adept on your part. What I'd like to talk about very briefly is something about which I have very little knowledge, which may or may not be true for a lot of what I say. But there are two movies that appear to be taking the country and the world by storm. They had simultaneous release and seemingly have nothing to do with each other. And I preface this by saying I've seen neither one, but plan to at least see Oppenheimer. And Oppenheimer, of course, is the person who went ahead and led his team in New Mexico, Los Alamos, to the creation of the atomic bomb. And he was obviously a genius, and he as we know, succeeded in his attempt in this top secret operation. And part of the film, from what I understand, is a man who succeeded scientifically and then wondered, perhaps for the rest of his life, whether that was the proper ethical and moral thing to do. And that is part of the dilemma. The other part, and again, I haven't seen it, but from some history I know, it did not end well for him. And his government pretty much, or our government, pretty much disowned him, and he was shunted off to the farmlands of academia to be on his own with not a lot of defense while he was carrying this very heavy burden. The only one who was somewhat close to him was Einstein, who also felt a very heavy burden about it. Einstein, I know, did a lot of peace work and anti-bomb work in his life, which I'm sure was therapeutic. I'm not sure that Oppenheimer did much like that, but I think it's a film that is important. It's tough stuff, but we have to see it, and there's a contemporary component of peace and war now. The other one, of course, is Barbie, and Barbie the doll came out in 1959. It was even then seen by many women as a stereotype of looking a certain way, having a certain body image, so that you could catch your man and have a life that's happily ever after, being in the kitchen, wearing pearls like Mrs. Cleaver and high heels, and raising the children in a fine suburban home, which was the American dream. And now, fast forward to 2023, and again, I've not seen the film, but I'm understanding there's a Dr. Barbie, an African-American Barbie, an astronaut Barbie, a large-size Barbie, and even a woman in a wheelchair Barbie. And some say that this is a tongue-in-cheek look at the old Barbie, as it were, and now this is a new feminism letting women know that they could do absolutely anything. I think that is a very interesting idea. I hear it's more of an adult film, and it is a lot of tongue-in-cheek, and there are many theaters around America that are showing the film simultaneously, and in some cases you can buy a 2-for-1, and I think they're calling it Barbenheimer as a discount. And it's just very interesting that that's what's on the cultural scene now. And it's I think, an interesting reflection of where the country is and where it's going. And so both are doing very well. And I'll take in at least one of them, maybe both, and we could be further along in this conversation the very next time. But until then, we're going to have a main topic of the day, and that is going to be on the fragility of democracy, the fragility of democracy. And this is going to be a 2-part presentation, one today and one next time. Today we're going to talk about the fragility of democracy in Israel, rather timely subject. Next episode will be on the fragility of democracy in the United States. And so much has happened recently in Israel on this very subject, and perhaps, Ticia, you'd like to start off with some of your thoughts about the recent Knesset voting and the stamp of approval by Prime Minister Netanyahu, and let's get into the fragility of democracy.
Well, to tell you the truth, even though I have some questions about it, perhaps more questions than statements that I can make, I can tell you this. The idea that's being pushed that the United States in some way should interfere by not being as supportive of Israel financially, militarily, etc., is abhorrent to me, because there is no other country in that area that we can consider an ally number one, or that is willing to put its people at risk to defend democracy, whether internally or externally from the threats that it receives. And the fact that Moody's came out, and Morgan Stanley and Citibank as well, apparently, criticizing Israel and looking to further devalue the shekel is also unbelievably disgusting. First of all, that's all their internal affairs. And we do ourselves a disservice by undermining Israel, period.
Well, I think, unfortunately, in my opinion, they've devalued themselves. And first of all, the obvious, we have a prime minister who is under investigation for bribery. And apparently, if one is prime minister, that may or may not go away. But one thing's for sure, that they have devalued not the shekel, but their Supreme Court, so that the prime minister can override anything that any decision the Supreme Court makes, making it basically not a two check and balance system, but a one check and balance system, or really a no check and balance system. It's a strange move for a democracy that was started in 1948 to really oligarchy or autocratic rule. And so this, to me, is a major change, a fundamental change in the ideals and idealism in which Israel was founded and has been a representative democracy up until just a few days ago. And so I'm afraid that the vote in the Knesset, 64-0, because all the opposition walked out for the first time, showing that it was not a regular vote, says that now there is going to be one ruler and a compliant Knesset based on the parliamentary system that they have. They keep him in power. And here's what I think is going to happen. Forget about stopping the settlements. The settlements are going to gallop into fruition and make a two-state solution to the problems in the Middle East physically impossible. And the two-state solution is very much in the interests of the United States, if not Israel. So goals between the United States and Israel are separating. And I think the President of the United States, whoever he may be, has a responsibility to the citizens of the United States. And there is an ally there that is very important. It's called Jordan. And I'm afraid that many of the Palestinians now, who may be losing even more rights, and Arab Israelis who may become second-class citizens, will be leaving for Jordan, making the idea of an American ally's new demography very tentative, very frightening, and very frail. So that's just the beginning of it. But I do think that our interests are diverging, and we are all for democracy. Now, as of now, I'm afraid in the Middle East, you need a scorecard to tell the difference. Well, I think we're coming up on a break, and Ticia's going to come back with some interesting thoughts on the subject. So we're going to see you on the other side of Civil Dissent. Stay tuned.
On our website, we are hosting a competition. Send in your most meaningful quote, including if you make one up, and we will use the winning quote at the end of the show and send you a $25 Amazon gift card. You can submit more than one quote, and we will give away up to 3 Amazon gift cards. Submit quotes by August 1st, 2023.
Well, thanks for staying with us. You're listening to Civil Dissent, and as I recall, we left off where Ticia wants to respond to my perception of the new Israel.
First of all, I think that it's been wholly mischaracterized in the media, and that Israel, unfortunately, has done, or its administration, a very poor job of presenting what's actually really going on. The fact of the matter is that the system that they are proposing to change, the changes essentially would lead to the same kind of systems that are used in Germany, France, Japan, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Belgium, Switzerland, Austria, Ireland, Netherlands, Denmark, Sweden, Iceland, Finland, Norway, and more. So those countries certainly are not in any way dictatorships or fascist or anything else. Part of the problem, I think, has been the media's sloppy covering of the issue. And it's very unfortunate because it has led to, as I say, weakening the financial standing of Israel. And this does nothing except embolden Iran, which we frankly don't need emboldened, especially since they've got now bigger rockets that they're threatening everybody with. It's really pretty ridiculous, considering the list of countries that essentially will employ the type of system that Netanyahu is proposing. And so I think it's been mischaracterized. Yes, he's under all sorts of scrutiny judicially, but nothing has led to his being convicted or found guilty. And so I think it's premature to use that against them, quite frankly.
Well,
excuse me. I just want to say one thing else.
Please.
That these changes that are proposed in the judiciary does not in any way diminish the power of the vote of the people of Israel. They can still hold their elected officials accountable. They can still hold the elected officials in the Knesset accountable. Now, truly, in the Knesset, they tend to vote in blocks. And that's a little different from the way we do it. But nonetheless, those representatives that wind up being part of those blocks, the public can have some say. The Israeli public can have some say in that. So it's not as though they're being dictated to, or that they won't have a say, or that they won't have remedies if they don't like what's going on. And another thing, this is not set in stone yet. There are still negotiations going on. Even with what is considered, quote, reasonableness as a concept.
Well, their Supreme Court is founded on the idea of judicial reasonableness. And apparently Netanyahu and his right-wing coalition don't agree on what reasonableness is. And I would understand that. It's everyone has their own definition. In terms of the countries you mentioned, no, none of them are autocratic. The prime minister, well, for example, let me give you an example. They don't even control their own agencies in their country. In Great Britain, I'm certainly aware that a couple of years ago, the News of the Day, which was a Murdoch paper, News Corp, was caught listening in on the phone calls of the royals. And then they applied to ownership of Sky News. And an independent agency found them having nothing to do with the PM. The PM was a conservative government anyway, but having nothing to do with the PM, denied Murdoch family ownership of any sort and had to dilute the stocks that they owned and get them out of Sky News.
Those are all other shows. Those are all other shows that we can get into. But the fact of the matter is that what is being proposed does not make Israel necessarily less democratic or more autocratic or fascist or any of the things that make news hot. All right? Not accurate, but hot. In some way, shape, or form.
Well, I'm sorry. There's a lot less democracy in Israel now. Apparently, it's one-party rule, take it or leave it. And lots of changes are going to happen. As I say, we are aware of their their platform. We know they're going to be instant settlements.
Look,
we know that they're going to have settlements, people in settlements who want the Palestinians out, despite any of the laws that exist now, including those made by this government.
But you know what? Frankly, the reason for that, if it takes place, is going to be because there hasn't been a separation between the state and religious institutions. And unfortunately, the religious factions in Israel are playing a part in the politics. And the reality is they shouldn't be. And so it's not that I'm particularly fond of these changes, but I do still maintain that they've been mischaracterized. And their balance has been mischaracterized.
Well, I wish Netanyahu had your opinion, because his coalition is made up mostly of the extreme Hasidim.
I don't know that that's the case.
Well, it is the case.
Well, I'm not so sure
I'm sorry,
that that's the case.
You don't have the facts.
They unfortunately have too much influence. But I don't know that that's the case. I think that they were incorporated so that he could maintain some control.
It's called, forming a government in a parliamentary system. And that's who he is in bed with. And by the way, the people that they represent, the constituency they represent, are exempt from military service.
I agree with you. This is unfortunate.
It's more than unfortunate, and because other Israelis have to do military service. And I'm noting that as of today, many of the Air Force refuse to fly because they're saying they will not fly for a non-democratic government. That's coming from military sources, and mostly it's Air Force pilots. So there is a difference. There are labor unions who want to strike about this. There are shopkeepers who are closing up shop, and you have a really divided and angry Israeli state because the minorities are not being, and a very strong minority is not being listened to.
Well, I have to tell you, their judgment has to be questioned, and the reason their judgment has to be questioned is because it's like cutting off your nose to spite your face. Israel is surrounded by hostility: Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Saudi Arabia. It's ridiculous. They haven't come to agreements with those countries, and they're in peril. So it's absolutely irresponsible of the very people that are protesting, that say that they want more say in government, and yet they're the people that are putting Israel at greater risk, and at the same time puts the United States at greater risk.
Yeah. The idea is, very quickly, that the United States is at greater risk because we have a nation that no longer shares our basic democratic values. And the president, although he was too quiet about it, did say that the results of that vote were, quote, unfortunate. I think they were a lot more than that. And finally, it's very sad that what the Arab nations that you speak of and the Palestinian people that you speak of that have been trying to destroy Israel since 1948 have all failed. History is going to record that the Israelis destroyed themselves.
Well, what's interesting is that they're cousins. They're historically cousins, quite frankly. And it doesn't surprise me, unfortunately, that they both seem to try to implode. If they're not attacking each other or being attacked by somebody else, they seem determined to implode. Both of them, both the Palestinians and the Israelis. I mean, it must be something strange in the character, quite frankly.
Well, that's, again, another deep dive. But I do respect the fact that you're trying to hold on to an ally at any cost. In any case, we've been very close allies for a very long time. But now, the point being is I respect that you want to hold on to Israel because, my goodness, they've been great allies since their founding. And I remember wonderful people like David Ben-Gurion, Golda Meir, Yitzhak Rabin, and they've got a great history in the democratic process. And I understand you're sentimental about the relationship. There's good reason for it. I would simply ask you to look at this again in the clear light of a new dawn. But thanks for your contribution.
Well, just in closing, I would say I think you brought up a lot of valid points, and in fact, I agree with you. I think it's an unfortunate situation. Where we differ is simply in I think it's important for the United States to continue to back Israel and not interfere in this situation. It's complicated enough, especially when in our own country, a lot of the federal judges are politically appointed.
Yeah, very true. And as we close, I think we have some really great people to thank, and we're going to start off with our friend Peter, who refuses a last name, but he's got a great podcast right here in Orlando, Florida. And the great name is called Scotch and Good Conversation. And it's a wonderful podcast. There's a nice podcast community that's rapidly developing in Orlando, and he is one of the leaders of it, and we are very grateful for his advice, his contribution, and I invite you to check it out. And recently, Ticia and I have been over at the East End Market here and on Corinne, and we want to mention and thank the Oasis and their village shop on the second floor. We also want to talk and shout out to Freehand Goods on the second floor and Corinne, and they are at 1201 on Corinne Drive in Orlando. And also at the East End Market, we want to mention Gideon's and Great Bake Shop and more. And so we've been very fortunate to meet local businesses and providers that have been very helpful to us. So on behalf of Ticia, we want to thank you for listening to Civil Dissent. And if you agreed with the view you've heard today, or if you have thoughts on your own, just go to our website, civildissent.com, to find references where you can make a real difference, and we encourage you to do that. Also, you can support us on Patreon, of course. You are urged to take action with people that you feel are either in your way or on your side. And we, again, refer to you to our website where references await. So we'll see you next time on Civil Dissent. Thank you so much for listening. And and Ticia is going to mention one more thing because I don't understand sign language.
I just want to invite you out for a cup of coffee.
All right, I'll come with you this time because you're just such a sweet person. So thank you. Can it be coffee con leche?
Yes, it can
my
be
favorite.
coffee con leche.
Okay, we got to get out of here because we're both thirsty and need some Java. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week on Civil Dissent. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Civil Dissent. If you agreed with a view you've heard today, or if you have thoughts of your own, go to our website, civildissent.com, to find references where you can make a real difference.
On our website, we are hosting a competition. Send in your most meaningful quote, including if you make one up, and we will use the winning quote at the end of the show and send you a $25 Amazon gift card. Submit quotes by August 1st, 2023.
Take action, and see you next time on Civil Dissent.